Hello, welcome to American Diversity Group Educational Video. My name is Jay Parekh. We have with us today a distinguished guest, Dr. Mahesh Ochaney. Dr. Ochaney is a veteran of internal medicine practicing in Glen Burnie, Maryland for over 30 years. He has a deep knowledge of not only medicine but specifically vaccines and the viruses. So today we are honored to have him here talk about vaccine. Welcome, Dr. Ochaney.
Thanks, Jay, for having me over. It's a pleasure.
So, Dr. Ochaney, everyone keeps talking about vaccine. Could you please explain what is vaccine?
Well, vaccines are biological agents that help us build up immunity in order to protect us from various diseases. When a microbe invades our body, our immune system responds firstly by recognizing it as a foreign agent, and then it does produce certain protein called antibodies that help us fight these microbes. Besides that, it also keeps a memory of the microbe, so in future, if we ever get infected by such microbes, the immune system is ready to fight the infection and protect us from the disease. Now, vaccines contain these microbes in various forms. They could be dead, they could be alive, or they could be a part of the microbe. When we give a vaccine to an individual, these microbes, dead or alive or parts of it, stimulate our immune system and to produce antibodies. So when we actually get exposed to these microbes in the real world, our body is already prepared with the antibodies to fight the infection and protect us from the disease.
Thank you, doctor, for the explanation of vaccine. Now, there are a lot of different types of vaccines out there. Where does COVID vaccine fit into the categories of all these vaccines?
So there are four main categories of vaccinations. The first one is the live vaccines, which contain the live microbe. But these microbes have been weakened or what we call attenuated by certain processes. And because they are weakened, they're not capable of producing the disease, but they can stimulate our immune system to produce the necessary antibodies. Examples of these vaccines are like the measles, mumps, and the rubella vaccine. The second category is the inactivated vaccines. In this category, we have vaccines that contain the dead microbe. So because they are dead, obviously they cannot produce the infection, but at the same token, they are able to stimulate the immune system to produce the antibodies. An example of this would be the flu vaccine. The third category is the toxoid vaccines. And these are vaccines that work against the toxins released by some of these microbes. So the toxins induce the antibodies, and the antibodies then work on the toxins from the microbe. Examples of these vaccines would be like the tetanus toxoid vaccine or the diphtheria vaccine. And the fourth category is what we call the subunit or the conjugate vaccines. And these vaccines, they contain just the parts of the microbe. It could be just like the part of the microbe containing the protein, or maybe the covering of the microbe like the capsid, and they stimulate the immune system to produce antibodies just to those particular parts of the microbe. Now, the newer vaccines that we have for COVID-19, they belong to a totally different category, and they use what we call mRNA technology. So going back to our cell basics, our body is made up of billions of cells, and each cell has a nucleus which contains DNA. And the DNA produces the mRNA, which are like the genetic codes or the blueprint to produce certain proteins that we need for the proper functioning of all the organs in our body. So the scientists have been able to isolate the mRNA for what is called the spike protein or the S protein on the coronavirus, because we know that is how the virus attacks and invades our body cells. So because they have isolated this mRNA, they use it in a vaccine, which after it is administered, the body cells use the genetic code on the mRNA and produce the spike protein. So they make multiple copies of the spike protein or the S protein, which then is seen by the immune system, and they produce, the immune system produces the antibodies towards the spike protein. So when a person gets exposed to the COVID-19 virus, they already have the antibodies to fight the virus, thereby protecting them from the infection or at least not giving them a severe disease.
So, based on the mRNA vaccines and the types that you talked about, Doctor, which vaccines are currently available for COVID-19?
So currently, FDA has authorized two vaccines. One is made by Pfizer BioNTech, and the other one is by Moderna. And they both are mRNA technology-based vaccines. There are several other vaccines in the pipeline, and there are three big companies that have clinical trials in phase 3. One is AstraZeneca, the second one is Johnson & Johnson, and the third one is Novavax.
So, based on the mRNA vaccines and the types that you talked about, Doctor, which vaccines are currently available for COVID-19?
So currently, FDA has authorized two vaccines. One is made by Pfizer BioNTech, and the other one is by Moderna. And they both are mRNA technology-based vaccines. There are several other vaccines in the pipeline, and there are three big companies that have clinical trials in phase 3. One is AstraZeneca, the second one is Johnson & Johnson, and the third one is Novavax.
So that's great with the number of vaccines approved as well as in the pipeline. Could you talk about the differences between the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine?
Actually, more than differences, there are more similarities between the two vaccines. Like I said, they both are based on mRNA technology. They both require 2 doses. They both have similar effectiveness of about 95%. They both have a pretty similar side effect profile. The difference is that the Pfizer is authorized for age group 16 and up, and the Moderna is authorized for age group 18 and up. And both the vaccines can be considered in pregnant women as well as mothers who are breastfeeding.
So, with all of these vaccines, could you talk about the safety of these vaccines? Because I know people have question about how safe is it to take these vaccines. So, could you touch on that for me, please?
There were thousands of people enrolled in the clinical trials, both with Pfizer as well as Moderna. Pfizer had 44,000 people in the clinical trial, and Moderna had 30,000 people in the clinical trials. And no major adverse reactions were noted in this huge population. Besides, the FDA reviews and scrutinizes the clinical data thoroughly. They also have an advisory committee, which consists of independent scientists all over the world who review the data from the clinical trial and make sure it meets the guidelines for their safety and effectiveness.
So it's really good to know that scientifically as well as clinically, it's proven that it's safe. However, people do have concerns about side effects. So could you tell us what are the possible side effects of taking this vaccine?
Overall, there are no major side effects for majority of the people. There are few people who will experience what we call minor side effects. They may get pain at the site of the injection site in the arm. They may get low-grade fever, chills, fatigue. But these are minor side effects. Very rarely we'll see some people develop what we call severe allergic reactions or anaphylaxis. These are anaphylactic reactions where they have trouble breathing. They may drop their pressure significantly. So people who are known to have severe allergic reactions to a drug or a vaccine or food should take precautions in taking this vaccine, possibly take it with close medical supervision and emergency care as a backup. The only contraindication for this vaccination, if someone has a true known allergy to any of the components of the vaccine, or if they've had a severe allergic reaction to the first dose of the vaccine, they should not take the vaccination.
So that's really great to know that there are minimum side effects and it's very safe to take these vaccines. A lot of people feel that once you have taken the vaccine, it's safe to not wear a mask. Could you talk a little bit about that? That should mask be worn after taking vaccines?
The short answer is no. Clinical studies have not confirmed for sure that people who are vaccinated are not going to be able to transmit the virus to others. So, for example, if someone gets vaccinated and they get exposed to the virus, they can still harbor the virus and be like an asymptomatic carrier and transmit the virus to others. So, in other words, in spite of taking the vaccination, everyone should continue the CDC guidelines for prevention of spread, which includes wearing the mask, washing hands, social distancing, avoiding crowds, and so forth.
Great message. Are there any vaccines for children?
The Pfizer vaccine is authorized for age group 16 and up. The Moderna vaccine is authorized for age group 18 and up. Currently, there are clinical trials going on for the age group 12 and higher, and we anticipate that a vaccine will be available for that age group hopefully later this year, somewhere in the fall and winter time. As far as the age group below 12, the clinical trials are soon to start, and the vaccine should be available for them possibly next year.
So just like the previous question about children, Doctor, question about are these vaccines recommended for people with autoimmune disorder?
That's an excellent question, Jay. Autoimmune disorder play a real tricky role in vaccination world. We know that most of these people are on immunosuppressants. Unfortunately, the clinical trials did not have patients with autoimmune disorders and on immunosuppressants in their study. So there is not clear evidence one way or the other. But experts believe that it's best to take the vaccination because some protection is better than no protection. However, these patients can try a couple of things. They can avoid taking the vaccination when they have a flare-up of their disorder. And also they can talk to their healthcare provider or the rheumatologist and see if any of the medications can be rescheduled in a way that they are either delayed or withheld temporarily to allow a window of opportunity to give them the vaccine to get a maximum response from the immune system.
I see. So once somebody has been vaccinated, what is the timeline to build immunity?
Well, we know that soon after you're vaccinated, it takes several weeks for the immune system to build up the immune response. It's not something that happens overnight. What we know about COVID-19 vaccines is that we get about a 52% effectiveness, according to the Pfizer study, by day 12 after the first dose. And in both the cases, you get the 95% effectiveness, usually by 2 weeks after the third dose.
So that's great. After 6 to 8 weeks, they build an immunity. But then the question arises that can one get COVID infection after they have been vaccinated?
That's another good question. The answer is yes. Like I just said, the immunity takes a while to build up. It takes a good 6 to 8 weeks to get that maximum immunity in your body. So let's say if somebody gets vaccinated today, it'll take several weeks to build up immunity, but if they get exposed to the virus a few days earlier, or even in the next 2 weeks, they're still capable of getting the COVID infection. So yes, in other words, even though you get vaccinated, you have to take all the precautions.
So, Dr. Ochaney, what is your opinion about general public taking vaccine?
Well, I know that majority of people are going to feel nervous about taking this vaccine. And that is very reasonable. But we have to look at this vaccination with a purely scientific perspective. The researchers have been very transparent with their clinical data. The clinical trials were reviewed and scrutinized by the FDA thoroughly. Also, there were independent scientists all over the world who have reviewed the data and made sure that it meets the standards of safety and effectiveness. Also, we know that science was not compromised behind this vaccine. No corners were cut. And there are a lot of benefits compared to the risks to this vaccine. In fact, the risk of not taking the vaccine is higher than the risk of taking the vaccine. So I think we should all feel confident and trust the vaccination. And we all know that vaccination is the most powerful tool we have in our toolbox in our fight against this pandemic, so we as a community can move forward. So I would definitely encourage everyone to strongly consider taking this vaccination.
Terrific. There you have it. Not taking vaccine is riskier than taking vaccine. That is quite a message. And that too, based on scientific data, proper thorough vetting by the authorities, I don't think we can go wrong. That's a very powerful message, Dr. Ochaney, you have given to us and information today. I hope people watching this video, listening to you, will be able to learn from this and not have fear in taking the vaccine and helping everyone get over this pandemic sooner than later. So, Dr. Ochaney, thank you very much on behalf of American Diversity Group for being here today and giving us such wonderful explanation of the details of what the vaccines are, what the pandemic is, and how we can all work together to get over it. So a message to everyone, be safe, take your vaccines as the authorities give it to you when your turn comes, and please, please, please take advantage of that.
Thank you, Jay, for having me over.